Greetings, everyone. Well, back in February of this year, when I was temporarily in a hotel due to asbestos removal taking place in my apartment, I began what has turned into an epic journey into the world of fantasy literature, experiencing for the first time the adventures of a classic fantasy character, in fact one of the first major fantasy characters ever, single-handedly credited with beginning the so-called sword and sorcery genre. I am of course talking about everybody's favorite Sumerian, Conan. Yes, I picked up a collected edition of stories, which I actually didn't get around to starting to read until fairly recently. And then fast forward to August of this year when the animated series, the first season of the animated series came out. I did a couple of videos about that, and when I was doing videos about my shelves there, I was saying how this is going to be the Conan shelf. Yeah, I've had to put the Conan shelf on hold because, well, I kind of needed those shelves for other things. Yeah, the DVD and Blu-ray collection was growing at an exponential rate, and as such, I needed the shelf space for the DVDs and Blu-rays. But I will get more shelves at some point, and the Conan shelf will happen. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, obviously Conan, otherwise I wouldn't be blathering on about it like I am. However, over the course of, well, I guess between the summer and now, I've acquired so much Conan stuff, and I have so much to say about it, that I think it's only fair to split it into not one, not two, but 3 parts, of which this is the first. So let us begin our journey into my Conan collection thus far, today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. If you're wondering what this is, it's my Guinness pint glass. The Guinness logo is kind of wearing off, but I always like to drink a few pints of water per day, and then wonder why I have to pee all night. Anyway, Conan. Let's start at the very beginning, shall we? Let's go all the way back to the original stories, created and written by Robert E. Howard. Well, this may look familiar. This is actually the collected edition that I picked up in February. Quite a nice edition. Got a lot of stories in here. How many stories are in here, actually? These are original, unabridged stories. We have the Hyborian Age, which is basically Howard's encapsulated history of Hyboria, and serves as the background for the world that the stories are set in, and was his own personal Bible as far as having a back history to draw upon and refer to during the stories and such. So if you want to know everything there is to know about Hyboria from the man himself, the Hyborian Age is where you want to start. Then we have Shadows in the Moonlight, also known as Iron Shadows in the Moonlight, something like that. Anyway, it's in the one of the other things we'll be looking at. So Shadows in the Moonlight, Queen of the Black Coast, The Devil in Iron, The People of the Black Circle, A Witch Shall Be Born, Jewels of Gwalior, Beyond the Black River, Shadows in Zambula, and Red Nails. Red Nails was actually the final Conan story that Howard wrote, apparently. So, anyway, quite a nice little collection. So we got, if we include the Hyborian Age, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 Conan stories in this collection, and I picked it up pretty cheap, actually. This was on the bargain racks at the local chapters, so not too shabby of an introduction to the original unabridged literary world of Conan the Barbarian. Very cool indeed. Well, and just today I actually picked up another collection. This is one that since diving into the collected edition here, this is a particular collection that I've been wanting to get my hands on because a lot of fans consider this to be the definitive collection of the original Robert E. Howard stories. It's actually 3 volumes. At this point I only have the first volume, but this is a set put out by Del Rey Books. This is the first one here, The Coming of Conan the Sumerian. And the cool thing about this is, unlike other collected editions that are either try to reconcile the continuity of the stories in some way or present them in order of publication date, this series actually presents them in the order that Robert Howard originally wrote them. So you really see the evolution of his craft as a writer, as well as the evolution of how he more deeply developed the character of Conan over the course of it. So very cool stuff, and I actually compared the list of stories in this to the list of stories in this, and there's a lot, almost everything in here isn't in this edition, so between the two of them I've got darn near all the Conan stories, which is pretty cool. Yeah, Robert E. Howard actually only wrote, I believe, 17 Conan stories, most of them being short stories, a few of them being novellas, and I think one of them being a full-length novel. So really there's not a lot of actual original Conan stories out there. There have been a lot of Conan novels written by other authors. Robert Jordan wrote quite a few. L. Sprague de Camp wrote quite a few, even going so far, much to the annoyance of fans of the originals, going so far as to rework, rewrite, and retitle a lot of the Robert E. Howard stories in order to better fit them into his own personal stories about Conan. Yeah, that ticked off a lot of fans. Anyway, this is the original unabridged stories from the most definitive texts available, and if you're looking for the definitive Conan collection to get, this is the one to get. There's 3 volumes total, as I mentioned. This is the first. The second volume is called The Bloody Crown of Conan and features, I believe, 3 stories, and then the final volume is called The Conquering Sword of Conan and features the last couple of stories in there. This one actually features 13 stories, so you got quite a good chunk of the original stories there. Just it doesn't have the longer ones, except the longer ones with the later ones. But the cool thing about this set is that it doesn't just include the original unabridged stories. It also includes a lot of story fragments and synopses for stories that were never completed. So you get way more Conan stuff in these editions than you get in any other editions. A lot of the material in here was previously unpublished, so a lot of it had never appeared before in any form. So it really is a treasure trove of treasure for anyone looking to get into the world of Conan. So let me give you a little look at the contents here. Oh, I should also mention this also features illustrations by Mark Schultz. Mark Schultz is a name who may be familiar to comic book fans as the creator, writer, and artist of Xenozoic Tales, also known as Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. So very cool stuff, and he's obviously a huge Conan fan because the illustrations he did for this book are just fantastic. Let's see if we can get a look at a few of them here. So there's a lot of just small illustrations like that scattered throughout the text and whatnot, and that's pretty cool. But there's also larger full-page illustrations, like like this one here. It's very cool. And there's also actual plate illustrations. If we here we are. It's from Tower of the Elephant. Conan meeting the elephant god, or whatever it was. I haven't actually read that story yet. So anyway, let me just skim ahead a little bit here. Where is it? Yeah, so we actually have these ones. There's I think there's 4 of these in the book, which are actually full painted images in here as well, which are very, very cool, very nice indeed. There was another one in here somewhere. Yeah, here's another one. It's quite nice. Where's the? There was one in particular. Iron Shadows in the Moon. That's the other title for Shadows in the Moonlight. Yeah, I knew I had seen that one in here somewhere. Yeah, like look at that. This is when they discover the ancient temple where they find the statues in there. I don't want to say too much about the story if you're not familiar with it, so as not to spoil any of the surprises. Suffice it to say, Iron Shadows in the Moon was actually the first of the original Conan stories that I read, and I thought it was just a ripping adventure yarn with lots of great twists and turns along the way. But anyway, and there's another one of the paintings, which is actually the full color painting on the cover. So it leads me to wonder, like, are all these black and white paintings actually full color? And is there an edition of this out there that has them in color? That's what I'd like to know. I know there is a hardcover edition. I don't know if it actually has everything in color. So, okay, here's the actual stories that are in here, in the order of originally being written. So we have Sumeria, which is, I guess, just basically one of his early histories of Sumeria. The Phoenix on the Sword, The Frost Giant's Daughter, The God in the Bowl, The Tower of the Elephant, The Scarlet Citadel, Queen of the Black Coast, Black Colossus, Iron Shadows in the Moon, also known as Shadows in the Moonlight, Zuthal of the Dusk, also known as the Slithering Shadow, The Pool of the Black One, Rogues in the House, The Veil of Lost Women, and The Devil in Iron. Yeah, so a few of those are in there. Like I know Queen of the Black Coast is, and Iron Shadows in the Moon is, and I think that's it, actually. I think the rest of them are not in the other edition I have, so that's pretty cool. So I think, to be honest, between the two editions, I may actually have every single story. But, I mean, obviously, I still want to pick up the other 2 volumes of this just for all the bonus material. There's quite a gold mine of stuff here. Like here, the actual stories only go up to page 348, and then you have the miscellaneous section, which goes on for almost another 200 pages. Or I guess another 120 pages. But, yeah, so, I mean, to give you some idea of the miscellanea that's in here, you actually have the original first submitted draft of the Phoenix on the Sword, which was the first Conan story. It was the first one he wrote, and also, actually, I guess it was the second one he wrote. The first one he wrote, I think, was, or no, I guess it was the first one he wrote, because he also wrote The Frost Giant's Daughter around the same time. He submitted that one, and it was rejected. It wasn't published until about 30 years later for the first time. But anyway, so this has the very first draft of the Phoenix on the Sword, the first written and the first published Conan story. And just from skimming through it, it does look to have quite a few differences. We got notes on various peoples of the Hyborian Age. We do have the Hyborian Age history here as well. I don't know how well you can see that, which is basically the, as I mentioned, the back history. So that's quite good. That's the Hyborian Age, I guess, was the very first Conan thing I ever read, because I figured, well, let's start with that and get the background information and carry on from there. And to be honest, the Hyborian Age is a bit of a dry read, because it's just kind of like his Bible, like his history of the world it's set in, and there's not really any plot to it or anything. It's just a lot of facts and information and sequences of events, much like a history book. So it is a bit of a dry read, but I do consider it essential reading, because it does give you a pretty solid foundation on which to base your visualizations of the stories as you carry through them. And then we got some untitled synopses, a couple of which turn out to be for published stories. We have one for the Scarlet Citadel, one for the Black Colossus. We've got an untitled story fragment, which is just a couple of short chapters. A couple of untitled synopses. Got an untitled draft, which is an almost complete story. You got a list of Hyborian names and counties. You got a couple of maps. Actually, can you even see it? There we go. Actually drawn by Howard himself. Got that one, and then I guess a slightly revised version there. So very cool stuff to have all that. And then you got appendices. You got background information. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I mean, this is far more than just, just another collection of stories. So if you're looking to get, the best collection of the original Robert E. Howard stories, definitely get the Del Rey set. You can still find it fairly cheap if you poke around online. The hardcovers tend to go for a little more. I was going to get the hardcovers, but I found this one locally at one of the local comic shops. And I just couldn't pass it up. It was like $17 to get it, and that's a lot of reading in there. So I'm definitely going to enjoy that. Then, of course, if we're talking about the success of Conan in literary form, we can't not mention the comics, because the comics, of course, have been going for years. I mean, the Marvel Comics regular series, the regular monthly series, I think ran for almost 300 issues. And then you had the Savage Sword of Conan, which ran for another 275 bi-monthly issues. That was the black and white magazine size format, which often had Frank Frazetta covers. Very cool. and Boris Vallejo covers as well, such as on the cover of this collected edition. That's a beautiful Boris Vallejo painting. I've had some poster or some calendars of his work before, but great stuff. And yeah, I remember always seeing Savage Sword of Conan on the shelf and being quite struck by the just the beautiful, dark fantasy covers. And I always actually really wanted to check out the magazine, but I just never got around to it. But well, now thanks to these collected editions, we can. So, just to give you some idea, this is a very nice edition. And I mean, normally I stray away from these sort of phone book style reprints of comics because often they're reprinting color comics. But this is actually originally a black and white comic, so I have no problem with that because this represents it pretty accurately. The only sort of caveat is the original magazine was magazine size, and it's been shrunk down slightly to comic book size. But honestly, I really don't think you're missing much in the way of detail and stuff there. I mean, this looks really nice, and everything comes through crisp and clean, and it's quite beautiful. So there we go. There's actually an adaptation of Shadows in the Moonlight here, Iron Shadows in the Moon, and you can. Let's just see how does it look in this one where they discover the temple thing. I think it's a little bit different. We go back. Here we are. Yeah, so here when they discover the temple, it's more like overgrown with moss and stuff like that. It's really interesting to me to see the varying adaptations and interpretations of the stories. The original stories were actually adapted several times over the course of the comics. But yeah, you may be wondering why I chose to get the collected editions of Savage Sword prior to getting the collected editions of the regular series. Well, the main reason being just there's fewer volumes of this. They have the Chronicles of Conan, or the Conan Chronicles, which reprint the original Marvel Comics color, like regular monthly color series, and that's up to like 23 volumes now, and you're looking at about $20 a volume, and each volume is about 160 pages or so, and that's fine, that's cool. They're very slick, very nice, very well put together, and I definitely plan to pick them up at some point. Now here, Savage Sword runs for about the same price, but each issue is about 544 pages of stories, and there's only 10 volumes currently. So a much more, less costly investment, and way more Conan for your hard-earned dollar. So I mean, come on, over 500 pages of Conan for $20. That's fantastic. Oh, here we have another. Where were we here? Just saw it. There we are. Yeah, so there. You can get a look at just an idea of some of the artwork. I mean, this is done by all different artists and, a lot of different writers and such. This particular run on Savage Sword, the early issues, was actually all written by Roy Thomas, who's considered one of the all-time great Conan comic book writers ever. And it's easy to see why, because even when you get to the Roy Thomas stories versus the adaptations of the original Robert E. Howard stories, you really don't see a lot of difference in writing style. I mean, they really do work well together. And one thing I found interesting is a lot of the stories in here, they'll do like an adaptation of one of the original stories, and then they'll do something of a sequel to that, which kind of continues the story featuring some of the characters from the original one, And I find that interesting, and they're good, solid, entertaining continuations that do justice and honor to the original stories. So I'm really enjoying this a lot. So I'm about halfway through this edition of the stories, and the reason I'm taking so long to get through it is because it's been my bus book. Whenever I go up island to pick up Rosie, I bring this with me, and that's been my bus reading. And then this one, I'm actually almost finished. I'm planning to pick up Volume 2 fairly soon. This has been my bedtime reading. So just before bed, I enjoy a little blood, guts, and boobs with everybody's favorite Sumerian. So there you go. So this is, it's a humble beginning to what will ultimately be a massive library, I'm sure. So this is going to be 3 books. This alone will be 10 books, and then the 20 plus volumes of the regular series. And then there's Call the Conqueror. There's 2 volumes of King Conan, Solomon Kane, and I'm definitely fast becoming a huge fan of Robert E. Howard and all of his work. So for now, I'm basically just immersing myself in the world of Conan, both in literary form and in comic book form, and just having an absolute blast with it. Having missed out on it for basically the entire span of the franchise, I'm like a kid in a candy store now. I have just like so many comics and books and everything to enjoy for the very first time. It's like I've just discovered this whole new world of dark fantasy that I knew existed but never partook of until now. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, that's it for part 1. I think I pretty much babbled about it as much as I possibly could. Alrighty. So we'll see you guys in part 2. Part 2, we're going to talk about the many film adaptations of Conan. Well, I guess the 3. Yeah, but we'll talk about that next time. Until then, thanks for watching, and sayonara.